Welcome to Critical Hit, a Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. Oh my gosh, that was the end of the season. It's over.
Surprised me.
Surprised? Well, you know, that was the thing that I think, let's just start right there. How many of you were surprised that that was the end of the season?
I was. I thought we had maybe more to go.
I knew it was the end when Rodrigo took the five of us away without anybody else.
Right.
I don't know, that happened early in the season, too.
Yeah, only you five. Yeah.
Well, the reason I was somewhat surprised is, the season's called Legacy of Ghosts, and we've hit on almost everything that's happened in past seasons, except for our surprise guest who showed up at the end with this, hey, remember me? I got a job for you, and you're going to take it, right? And so I was like, oh, well, this is still part of this legacy of what we've developed that's going forward. And then it's just like, nope, it's over. And it's like, oh, boy. So,
well, has this season been 2 years?
Just about. It's been about a year and a half, almost 2 years, because we started recording. I want to say I don't have the official open, but we've gone at this point 70 some episodes. So that's about a year and a half, 2 years with everything that we do and throw in. I think
it was
between.
Like a year and maybe 6 months.
Because didn't you join in like August, September of 2015?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe like a year and 3 months.
Yeah. So it's quite a ride, and I think that's a good story. How many of you enjoyed the story?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So Rodrigo, good job on that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Were you surprised? Because you and I talked, and for listeners, we were going to record a wrap-up show immediately after the episode that you guys heard last week, but as you knew, Rodrigo's connection wasn't great, so we've all kind of had a week to reflect on this. Mm-hmm. I chatted with Rodrigo shortly, saying, boy, I think that this was a surprise for many people, and you were kind of surprised by that, Rodrigo.
Yeah, I think I know why it may have been surprising, and it's not necessarily having to do with what went on before, but really what happened or rather didn't happen afterwards.
Nobody died. Nobody never heard from again.
I made the mistake, chose to say like, yeah, you guys can teleport anywhere. At which point everybody talked for like 15 minutes about where they wanted to go, decided on a particular place, at which point you can't see the denouement. It's like 6 weeks away. Right. So I was like, oh, yeah, that I shouldn't have done that. I think if the characters had seen what had happened, it would have been it would have made a lot more sense to make that an ending to the season. Mm-hmm. So,
like if we had teleported right to the the site.
Yep.
Gotcha. Oh, good. That makes me excited to find out what happened there after we left.
Yep. If we find
everyone
out.
Exploded.
There's like a giant portal to nowhere.
Yep.
Oh, now that I'm looking back, Legacy of Ghosts season 5 episode 1 kicked off on July 11th, 2015. So about a year and a half. So Sam would probably be with us almost 2 years because we would have recorded probably a month before that.
The first few episodes though.
Oh, that's right. Sam was
in the Feywild.
Right, that's right. Yeah. There were however many episodes before. Well, she joined in what, episode 2?
Yeah, she was in the first episode.
Yeah.
I was in the first episode, yep.
Yeah.
Well, she was in the first session. I don't know if she actually was in the first episode, but
I think I was. Yeah, I definitely was because we had those horrible audio issues with me. So I think I was there for the combat that was in the first episode, though I don't think I actually spoke in character until the very end of it.
Yeah. Wow, interesting.
I wasn't invited to those sessions, so
Well,
he wasn't.
I know you listened to every single word that was uttered in the pods of casting, Matthew.
Well, of course I did, but 18, 19 months later, I may still be just a little bit hurt.
You guys showed up in episode 309, so you were just 2 episodes later. And when did Ket show up?
Ket's always last.
Coldport Dead or Alive was episode 311. 312, surely by then we knew it was Ket.
Surely.
Oh, yeah, because by the time we hit 313, the Plague District, we definitely knew this was Ket.
I think it might have been in 313 that it was 100% confirmed.
Openly
that it was
revealed,
Cat.
Yeah. So
I know
Sam,
people were guessing immediately. What's his deal?
oh yeah, we'll get to. Speaking of trying to guess someone's deal, Matthew.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think of Matthew holding out on his character reveal until almost the very end of the season? I know Rob has expressed interest in. Oh, is this how frustrating I was?
That was
actually,
in
I
character.
think so.
That was Ket expressing
Yes, I know.
interest.
But that was said through Rob's eyes of, oh my God.
Yep.
No,
Rob knows. Rob knows what he's doing.
yeah. Annoying people? Come on. I know exactly what I'm doing.
That's true. You are not.
Now, I actually kind of didn't care what Matthew was for most of this
pretty
season.
much.
I'm just like, all right.
Thanks.
Well,
I didn't
you want
have...
to keep it a secret for some reason? Whatever. I mean,
I didn't even have enough context to realize it was a secret until like the second or third session I was back when I found out that we weren't sharing your character sheet for some reason.
Yeah.
Like,
Purely decorative reasons. Yeah.
So
All right.
what came? Or go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like popping out of existence when we needed him or anything, so it really wasn't an urgent issue.
True.
Yeah.
Which came first, the vampire or the backstory, Matthew? Or did you know that you wanted to play?
Yes.
You knew you wanted to play a vampire, or
This is
or
one of
half
those things
vampire?
where,
I don't know how that works.
you know how Simon and Kirby have different explanations of how Captain America came to be?
Oh yeah, that Stan Lee created it all. Yeah,
Sure. It was one of those moments where Rodrigo is like the best, most infuriating kind of person to play off when you're trying to create this stuff, because he's always supportive and he's always like, well, did you think about this? But it's always one of those things where it's like, I should have thought about that and now I hate you. But yeah, there was basically a discussion of mechanically, since there's a role to be filled, what you had to be, because Torque's job as a defender guy had to basically kind of stay around because no one else in the group really does that. So with that in mind, we went to certain places and I'm like, well, there's like 19 different things. And he's like, well, you can probably do 3 of those. And then what really set it off was he said to me, or if you want, I can tell you a secret about the world of Critical Hit. And you cannot say no to that. When Rodrigo offers to tell you secrets of the world of Critical Hit, you can't not admit it and say, yes, I want to know this now.
Also, the catch was that he kind of had to go with the concept if I told him the secret, right? It's like you can either make your character or take what's in the box.
Right. And I didn't get zonked, but I'll tell you, to be 100% honest, I'm really bad at this. And I do this sometimes if you follow me on Twitter.
Bad at what this?
Well, sometimes if you follow me on Twitter, I will play a guessing game in one of my 10 things lists. And I'll be like, here's something that I think is really obvious. And people are like, we don't get it. And also, you're stupid and we don't care. And sometimes what seems like really obvious things to me that I felt like I was obviously doing clearly did not come through.
Well, let's be honest. I don't understand, that's stupid, nobody likes you and we don't care. Those are all separate tweets from me in the same account. You know that, right? It's not a bunch of different people.
I thought he was quoting me.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just kidding there, Matthew.
Yeah, it's great to have friends. Someday I'm going to introduce you guys to mine.
Well, no, but you had said, I think on this show before, when it was, I think, right after the reveal, that you said you wished it would have come out sooner.
I did, and I do. And there were a couple of times where I actually tried, and it didn't come together. And, that's the nature of any type of collaborative effort. If the opening isn't there, it just isn't there. And when we're dealing with, 6 voices and 6 very, very strong personalities, there were a couple of times where I felt like dramatically it would have been much, much more meaningful and better than the place that it came out. But, if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass when he hopped. So you kind of got to do what you got to do. I think it was really the secret that Rodrigo told me that locked down the whole thing about the character, not just mechanically, but in terms of what I saw him trying to be and trying not to be. And it's one of those things where I'm probably, possibly going to be playing the character again. So I don't want to be like the guy who tells you everything and, dissects
Sure. Well, I mean, we know that your character is alive at least at the end of this season. So,
as alive as he was at the beginning of the season.
Sure. And my expectation was, and that still may come to pass, was that somebody is going to betray us. It's going to be somebody who is close that somebody trusts, but the rest of us may not. And so when you popped up and you're like, I'm Mr. Mysterious Guy, I'm like, oh, guess what? He's going to be the one that's working for the secret organization the entire time. But instead, Sam, you were the one that got surprised by the turncoat or the double agent.
That was me getting a nice dose of evil genius Rodrigo, because when I created Little Sparkle, he's like, make a bunch of NPCs for me, like come up with her contacts and her family and her backgrounds. And then he like steadily over the course of the season introduced them. And it was like, exactly how I portrayed them. All right, I killed him off screen, but whatever. Exactly how I betrayed him. And it's like, and exactly how I betrayed him, except for secretly a double agent. I was like, well, okay then.
See what I said about infuriatingly perfect and hateful at the same time?
Yeah, so the secret is when Rodrigo's asking you questions, he's really pumping you for information, number one, and number two, priming you subconsciously to do the things he wants you to do.
Yep.
People should know that by now.
I don't think it's so much the things he wants you to do.
Beware, social engineers. Rodrigo is coming for you.
I really think that it's more based on what you're telling me, what do I think would be most entertaining to get you to do? And then what can I do to make you go there? And I think he does that extremely well. You're evil, but we love you.
Oh, thanks.
So,
you're welcome.
Question.
There was a commenter who predicted that. He was like, I think Techiatl is like, he thought he was like a Rakshasi, but like I called that he was, not on the team. And when I first saw that comment, I was like, oh no, I wrote that guy. That can't be true. And then I was like, oh.
That commenter was secretly Rodrigo.
Probably.
I know, right? It was just like really impressive.
He's been doing that. He's got like a massive army of sock puppets.
Every season, there's somebody who usually calls some of the major mysteries. Like one person or another has that flash of he's like, oh, he's gonna add the Holy Rollers to like the separate teams, or it's like, oh no, like this is actually a different guy than we think. And it is because it's like things are only satisfying if they're set up, right? So that's as a storyteller, that's the risk that you have to take. You have to set things up ahead of time, and the risk there is that some people are going to catch it, right? So it's hard to set something up only in such a subtle way that 5 people won't catch it, and it's extremely difficult to do it in a way that thousands of people won't catch it.
I just assume those people who are getting things really, really close are all people that you guys have talked to and said, "Shh, don't say anything," and then secretly they've come out.
No, I do not. I do not talk to anyone.
Oh no, I know you don't.
I don't either.
There was. I was looking for some. Go ahead, Matthew.
I think that's important. Is I didn't talk to any of you guys or anybody but Rodrigo before the game started. And I think that's another, fascinating, terrible, evil thing that he does, because when you first meet Randus and Sakaar, I believe that's the moment that Brian found out about Sakaar, or at least part of him.
No, I had told him. Him that you were Sakaar, but I did actually kind of introduce Sakaar to him as an NPC.
Yeah,
and then I was like, "Oh, and by the way, this guy's going to be played by Matthew."
Yeah, that's basically when I figured out that no, Matthew's not just this guy that was mentioned a couple times in the backstory, and
I could be a guy.
Or yeah,
I know one thing that people had said a couple of times throughout the season was, man, I was really hoping for another 1/2, 1/3, 1/4 type story.
Mhm.
And it did happen this year.
Well,
People just
yeah.
didn't realize it because the name stayed the same,
Mhm.
even though the character changed. What, 3 times, Rodrigo?
Yeah, we had like 3 different set of stats for Orem as he traveled through the dimensions.
Yeah.
Some of them weren't very drastic, but honestly, the real how the other half lived of the season happened at the beginning of the season,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
First 2
So
episodes or 3
the
episodes.
first time we did it, it was like how that guy that you keep making fun of actually had what that guy you keep making fun of has to deal with that character,
Mhm.
right? That was the point of the first one. Then the second one was how do other people that have the same role as you, how other classes that have the same role as you, how they function and are different and are interesting, right?
Mhm.
With the animal allies, it was much more of like a story thing, just to kind of fill it out. But for this, the point was what happens when it's actually different people playing,
Mhm.
So the real how the other half live, and the only reason why it works is because this is a podcast that people are listening to. Otherwise, if you just go play a game with someone else, then you come back to them, it's like, hey, guess what? This happened. Like, your players are going to be like, well, I don't care. I wasn't there, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But because of the format, this really allows you to play. And I actually had somewhat more extensive plans for that at the beginning. I was actually going to have multiple kind of starts that focused on different characters.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But logistically speaking, that was going to cause a lot of problems. And basically, it was going to involve a lot of me telling Steven that whatever character he was playing, because we can't play without Steven, I'm like, okay, here's your character, and here's the reason why he's not coming along on the adventure, like
Yeah, yeah,
every
yeah.
time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like that, I think it would have gotten old. So after the first one, I was just like, I'm just gonna introduce the rest of the characters in a more organic way.
Mhm. So what was your favorite part of this season, Rodrigo?
My favorite part was probably like seeing the collaborations work out. Definitely, adding Sam
Mhm.
to the podcast changed lots of things, and Matthew coming in with a new character changed lots of things. And they both know that a long time ago we started working on things that didn't pan out or flourish or flop until very late in the season. So actually being able to execute the things that they had planned out with them and surprise them with certain things and all this stuff. Because and that actually goes with everyone, not just with the people that are bringing in new characters, because prior to this season, we spent a lot of time talking about the time jump and what the characters had been doing.
Right. And we've addressed that a little bit before, but for people that don't remember, we spent a long time while you were listening to Modern City and the Fifth Adventure, 5e Adventure. I think those are the only 2, right, that we did?
I think so.
The board game.
Oh, yeah, and the board game. We were spending a lot of time emailing back and forth Rodrigo separately, individually, to say, hey, what's going on during these 5 years?
5 play-by-mail games, basically.
Yeah. With our characters and how are they going to evolve and those kinds of things. So I found that interesting, although frustrating. And I think we've talked about that before. My frustration was, okay, here's day 1. Now here's day 2. Now here's day 3 for each exchange we were having it. And other people were like, well, in this year, and I'm like, oh, is that how we're supposed to be doing it? Because at one point I was just like, I don't know what to do after the first month,
Well, I had roast beef last night.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But that's part of the fun of the game too, is all of us bring different expectations and perspectives. So if you're playing just one-on-one with Rodrigo and you're not, balancing out or trying to, wait and come back around, and you don't have Orem to play off or Rob to play off, it really does make for a different, no less fascinating gaming experience. And I feel like that part of the game made this season, for me, more immersive. And I don't necessarily mean that I wasn't immersed in previous seasons. I mean, it's hard to say because so much of that didn't actually make it into the games as they were aired. But they are an important part of pretty much everything that I did in the entirety of the season. So,
What was the most frustrating thing that you came across, Rodrigo?
Most frustrating thing.
he started with an M sound, and I was about to be sad.
That's the most frustrating person.
Oh.
Yeah. Most frustrating thing, always the players. No, I think for me, always the most frustrating thing about these games is coming up with something better later. Where I'm like, if we had actually gone in this direction instead of that direction, things would have actually been a lot more exciting. Case in point, last season.
On Critical Hit.
Yep.
That was a 60%er right there, baby.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Of course, when it's like rolling your dice to prepare, right? It's like when you're not trying to get it right, it works.
Right.
But I thought, like halfway through, or maybe 2/3 of the way through the season, I was like, if I had actually landed the characters in the opposite side of the continent and they had to make their way east instead of west, things would have actually worked out a lot better, like plot-wise and reveal-wise and all this stuff. And I know that people aren't necessarily like, oh, yeah, because this would have been flipped. Obviously, the story would have been very different because of like the time when information would have been given and blah, blah, blah. But I think it would have been both more entertaining and more interesting and also smoother. And kind of a similar thing happened this time around where I thought, the characters attacked this like impenetrable fortress in the middle of a city that is run by this organization, and then they went to a secret facility out in the middle of nowhere. And really what I should have done is flip it. Like the first attack should have been on a facility out in the middle of nowhere, and then the second attack should have been on like the biggest possible stronghold with the largest potential loss of life if something catastrophic happened in the city, so on and so forth.
Sure.
So really, for me, that tends to be the like at some point, during pretty much every season, I'll be taking a shower and I'll be like, because it's already too late.
You heard it here first, by the way. During each season, he takes one shower.
Usually, if I go when I'm in the shower, it's because there's a big spider that crawled in. Yeah. Of course, I think one of the biggest changes to this season was the addition of Sam. And Sam, I had not ever met you before. I don't know if anybody here had met you before. Nope. So you were new to everyone except for Rodrigo. Yeah. And, and in the same way with, now I knew George, but not face-to-face knew George, because George had written for Major Spoilers before. So I knew him and kind of knew his attitude and approach to things.
You knew Casey.
And I knew Casey too. So I was kind of comfortable with them, but twice now in the last year or so, I've had to sit down with complete strangers and play a role-playing game. And it's always been interesting to see how does this person approach this? What's going to work or what's not going to work. And I've been totally impressed with you since day one, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
It's just been really fun having
really
you on board.
That.
Yeah, no, it's it. And what were your thoughts when you came on board?
I was so nervous. Rodrigo has received probably far too many IMs and emails from me about like, am I doing okay? Do the guys like me? Am I being too aggressive? Am I not being aggressive enough? Am I like pissing people off? Am I stepping on people's toes? So, you guys had this like really good dynamic going, and I knew no matter what, I was going to change it, and I was hoping that I could, fit in well, and if anything, change things for the better, but was very worried that you wouldn't like me, or the fans wouldn't like me, or anything would happen, and you'd be like, nope, this isn't working out. Get out of our game.
You're fired.
Yeah. Well, so Sam won't be joining us next season. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, so that's been really interesting to approach that, and I think part of the ease in the transition to having Sam in the game is that we had played with Adriana previously, which I think some of us knew her before she joined the game. I don't know if you guys, Rob says no, knew her. But then also Sakar was a brand new character that we also had to cope with and deal with. So I think that kind of helped in that transition. But I think we're kind of easygoing enough when it comes to,
Yeah.
I mean, it's Rodrigo's game we're playing in it, right?
So here's a quick peek behind the Dungeon Master screen again. There's a reason why the beginning of the season was so fragmented, and it's because if it had been like Ket and Orem and Randaz like with their backs against the wall, like zapping aliens, and then these two new guys show up, there would have been like this kind of like immediate like us and them situation. So I like very deliberately broke the original group, or the remnants of the original group, up and introduced these new characters with a character that was already established, and then Rob is last.
Smart.
So that way, when they meet up, it's like basically Orem is vouching for Little Sparkle, and Randus is vouching for Sakar, and it just kind of builds a differently shaped connection that way, as opposed to the new guys versus the old guys.
Yeah, and I thought it worked out really well because people were so like, especially that very first episode where there were totally like 3 new people, and then everyone's like, who's staying here, and where's Ket, and where's Randus, and is everyone playing new characters? Is no one coming back?
Yeah, that was one of the main questions in the first couple of episodes. Were does this mean that everybody's not coming back, and who are these new people, and what's going on? And it's like, I remember there were many emails that I had to reply back to people saying, just listen,
All will be.
It's kind of like, my son a lot of times will be sitting there and he'll start watching a TV show or a movie that we're all watching, and he's like, well, what's that? And what's going on? And what's going to happen? And what did they say? And I'm like, well, if you just sit and listen, they will explain everything to you.
Or you're watching a David Lynch film.
Or yes, you need to stop watching Eraserhead. Yes.
Or you're
Wait a
watching
minute.
anything
Why am I letting a 10-year-old watch Eraserhead?
Why not?
Punishment.
Maybe. Yes, Rob.
Yeah, I remember some crafty listeners looking at when all the new characters sheets were posted, realizing that Sparkle had like a full gear kit while the others had really basic gear, and being like, well, clearly one of these things is not like the other, which I found pretty funny.
The other thing that's nice is at the before leading up to the season, there were several posts over at majorspoilers.com saying, who will return, who will join, and we had some great art by Alex Diakon, who does a lot of the art now for Major Spoilers. And if you're a a Patreon member, your original art you're getting from him. That postcard you're getting monthly is his art. And one of the interesting thing was there was it 2 separate posts or 3 separate posts, Rodrigo? I forget which.
There was one that was who will join, and one that was who will return.
Right. And it's interesting, by the end of this season, all of those characters had made an appearance. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep, and what's great was because of the specific situation, they were all over the place. It's like, actually, Ket is in both, right? Because one of them was the character that he was pretending to be.
Right. Yeah. And then if people are always like, so what does so-and-so look like? It's like, there's a picture right there. It's already there. It's been in front of your face the entire time. I think that this surprises some people because over on your Tumblr page, Rodrigo, somebody had asked the question about Oversight, which everybody calls Overwatch, mainly because of the
great game.
Yep, I had it's kind of an issue because I had decided to use the name Oversight 1,000 years ago, right? Before Blizzard even announced Overwatch. So that it's just kind of unfortunate that the two are so similar. But I wasn't going to like just make a hard right at that stage. So I was just like, I'll just go with it.
Yeah, and so you kind of answered that question that you've had this in place for 1,000 years. The questions has oversight and all of the associated stuff existed since way back when you first introduced the Queen's Rebellious Daughter, or did it come about later?
Right. And really the answer to that lies with Steven, because when he was getting ready to do the Game Master's workshop, actually, I think maybe even before that, he was like, does this world have a name? The way that, Forgotten Realms is Faerun.
Oh, right.
So, so forth. And I was like, yeah, I've been calling it Vertex, but, nobody in the world really calls it that except for some like very archaic books, So it's like, yeah, there's always been the vertices have been something that we could potentially go into, is something that I came up with a long time ago.
But I don't think that was ever in a recorded conversation.
No, it was over email.
Yeah.
It was over email, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go, listener who's been pondering that for decades. Rob, what was your favorite part of the season? Getting to meet Ket's family?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, finally actually getting to introduce some of Ket's backstory that's not all
soul
Ket
stealing and
terrible.
dealing with evil gods. Yes.
Getting to go to Coldport, getting to be way less secretive about everything.
I'm sure there's still questions.
Well, there's always going to be questions. Yeah, otherwise, when we got back and started the trek to the southern continent, that was... I liked the idea that Rodrigo threw at us.
With everybody
submitting questions and whatnot. I wish I would have figured out what he was doing before I'd sent all the questions, because I didn't realize he was going to have us answering them. I thought we were asking him questions for some of it.
Right.
Because a couple of my questions were like, well, what's going on with the gods?
There is one question, and I'll say that, I do read the comment sections all the time, and there's one question that people have kept asking again and again and again, and believe me, listeners, I was always looking for a way to introduce the question into the narrative, but there was never an opportunity, because when I would get to say something, Rodrigo's like, suddenly this blows up. And I was like, oh, well, I can't ask the question right now. That would be
Things are suddenly blowing up all the time.
Yes, that would be totally inappropriate to ask while we're pinned down inside of a big black tower of doom. So, there's always questions that can be answered in the future as well. Brian, what about you?
What is that question?
Yeah, what was your
Oh,
question?
no, I'm now going to let people think about it and ponder it.
I know what it is.
Which one is it, Matthew? Do you know?
Oh, I can totally read your mind.
Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did I have for lunch?
Tacos.
No, that was for dinner.
I can read your Instagram.
Yes.
Hang on,
was also,
give me a second to load here.
That was also dinner, not lunch. No, I mean, it's pretty obvious if you go back into just the comment section, because probably about ever since we hit the southern continent, and especially in the episodes where the Queen's Rebellious Daughter shows up, the question pops up a lot in the comment section.
Oh, is it about him?
About Queen's Rebellious Daughter? No.
No, she's a her.
I know.
No, the other one. With him.
No.
Okay.
It's
So
about
not
the
him?
tiger.
Nope. Although that question has come up, but that was not one that was been asked the most.
I'm gonna be all mysterious then.
I will be.
It's in the
Is it
comment
the thing in
sections.
the thing?
It's in the comment
Oh,
sections.
man.
You'll
Now
see.
Rob's going to troll the comment section. 64% of respondents asked this.
And I'm sure there's already an answer, but I think the answer would be best given in the story and not in a discussion like this.
Yeah, that's why all the answers are there.
Yeah, exactly. Brian, what did you like best about this season?
I think I like the exploring other worlds.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I liked the different Orems.
yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I mean, I really enjoyed the additional detail we learned of, our primary world and everything. But like being able to hop over to other realities and explore the vertices, that was fun.
I think I'm a big fan of the multiverse theory, and so being able to do this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Rodrigo seemed very apologetic the first time. He's like, "Your character's changing," and he's like, and he pulls me aside. He goes, "Your character's changing. I'm sorry." I'm like, "Why?" I mean, I'm okay with it. I'll roll with it. And then he gave me, what was first? Beefy Orem?
No, Flat Orem.
Flat Orem. Flat Orem.
Flat Orem, bam-a-lam. Whoa, Flat Orem, bam-a-lam.
And I was like, I'll roll with this. At the time, I didn't realize I was really a Flat Orem. But, I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, interestingly, I remember it differently.
Oh, really? Because I remember, Steven, I got to talk to you. You pulled me aside and he goes, I'm changing your character. Yep. I'm sorry. And then I think you sent it to me in the email or something right after that.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like, because, I wasn't giving you a choice about it. But I remember afterwards, like, talking to you about it, and I was like, yeah, people seem to really be into, like, the Flat Orem stuff. And I remember you were like, well, Ket was a bird for a while, and he dealt with that, so I guess it's my turn.
Oh, yeah. I remember that, too.
But I think everybody settled into, like, in retrospect, Flat Orem was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody actually did enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it was fun. And so was Beefy Orem. I like Beefy Orem, too.
Beefcake.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what.
I did really enjoy the Beefy Orem characterization. Because you changed the way you spoke and the tone of your voice as Beefy Orem every time. And I was just like, man, that is impressive commitment.
Well, because let me pull up the character sheet really quick that you can find.
My name's Orem now. That's how I talk.
Like the slow realization in that one world that was all anti-Fae that you'd been captured.
Oh, yeah. Beefy Orem. So regular Orem is 5'10", 100 pounds. Beefy Orem is 5'10". Oh, I guess we still have him as 100 pounds, but he had to have been much bigger than that. And so
he was just inflatable.
So the whole weird thing about Beefy Orem was he's not used to being in this kind of a body. So he would stumble and fall and not know his own strength because he'd never experienced it before. So
I actually, when I was going to give Steven Beefy Orem, I actually really considered changing his class. Mm-hmm. And because Beefy Orem is still a wizard. Right. He's just a Goliath wizard. Yeah. So I really thought about just making him like a straight up fighter or maybe like an essentials fighter so that it would be easier. And basically say it's like not only did he get beefier, but he also got dumber. And he did, but only by like 2 points. Basically just lost his Eldrin bonus to intelligence and gained it in strength or something like that.
Yeah, because my strength, and again, VIP and Patreon members can access it. My strength went from 9 to 22.
Oh, no, I did move it then.
And the intelligence went from 23 down to 20.
Yeah, I moved his dexterity up to his strength is what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
I was just going to be like, well, you get to this world and you're too dumb to cast spells. Like you can't grok your own spells anymore, so you're just gonna have to hit things. But I decided not to do it because I was already kind of asking a lot of Orem or a lot of Steven to be like, here, deal with this much change, as opposed to just handing him a brand new character and being like, here, hurry up and learn this.
I could have handled it.
I know you could have, but
what was the deal with Beefy Orem turning into like a skittering monster when he got hit by one of Brandis's heel darts?
Hang on a second. You guys tell me. What was the deal with Sekar turning into a monster? You don't have to tell me, Matt.
Beefy Orem that did that? I thought it was Paper Orem. I thought it was on the...
Well, either way, it was Sekar blood reacting with Orem.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And here's what's great about this. It's like I actually personally tried very hard to seed Sekar's mystery and make it important to the story. And like at every turn, pretty much, Rob just smashed it. Like anytime Rando says like that was weird, maybe we should look into that. And Rob, as Ket would be like, we're in a different dimension. Don't worry about it. Like, that's probably what it is. Orem is being super weird because also. For whatever reason, Orem would be the one taking the most damage in both fights, right? Either as like a flimsy piece of paper or as a beefcake, Orem would be taking the most damage. So all of the heals went to him. So there was this, scientifically speaking, there were all of these factors, and you couldn't draw a direct thing. Like if Randus had ever hit
variables.
Yeah, too many variables. So if Randus had ever hit anybody else with it, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But even in the fights, like seriously, it's like Rob was just the bane of my existence in that sense. Because even in the fights, Randus would be like, "Hey, should I hit Ket with this?" And Rob would be like, "No, I have enough hit points. I can deal with it."
But the same thing would have, or something similar would have happened to Rob had that,
right.
To
Something
Ket
similar would have happened to Ket if he had been hit with it.
Yeah, my initial thought was just, oh, this is the weird magic's working in this world with magic types. So, and then if it would have hit Ket, and the same thing would have happened, the assumption would have still been Ket's a magic-y type. This is
I would say the Eldrin heritage.
Yeah, would have still been doing it.
Would have been there to futz with it too. Like, I think it would have had to be hitting little Sparkle before
probably.
we actually questioned anything.
I'm like the only one without any magic.
No magic, no Fey relation whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, and that's the thing is,
if
like,
it had happened on like the Blood Bill plane, I still could have seen a reason.
Right.
It's like, birds are weird here.
Yes.
Yeah. There was always a reason, and Rob is very logical. And there was this important variable that is, there's a mystery over here that he didn't even know about. So he's like, well, what do I know? This, and this. It's probably one of those things. Also, it's not actually causing us any problems, so let's not even worry about it.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Occam's razor, and I don't care.
We got bigger things to worry about.
The other way around.
Yeah. Matthew, did you have a favorite point or a most frustrating point of this season?
See, that's a very loaded question, because I find that, especially since we have gone to our current recording session, I find that, and I don't know if it's me or what, but for the last year or so, every single time it's like, okay, it's critical hit night. I have a terrible, terrible day. I don't know here. Don't know why. I think it's just my karma. Somebody hates me for some reason. So, there were some moments I think that were frustrating from a personal level that I hope didn't make it all the way to game level. I think probably my favorite part was just that whole bit with the Dream Quills and just those whole sequences leading up into that, because the first dimension we went to was all like, oh, this is freaky weird. Then we jumped to the next dimension. We're like, okay, now we've got this. And no, we did not. And it was hysterical to me just to see us just suck. And then all right, oh yeah, you get a cool ring. I think that was from the Dream Quills. We got the cool ring.
We got the cool rings from the Dream Quills, but the Dream Quills were in the first dimension.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the first dimension
Math
was
is
the
hard.
Blood Bills and the Dream Quills.
Did I mention how moving it's not actually moving, but for some reason the schedule just made my brain? Okay.
Yeah. The third world was the Orem in a Bottle episode.
Orem in a bottle.
Which was fun. I kind of enjoyed that. And I kept waiting for things like what happened in, and again, people that I've listened to everything and paid really close attention, you'll know that in Season 2, when Orem would do his face step, that he would have these visions of different things. And at one point, he has this vision of this jackal walking across a desert.
No, I mean, it's not a vision. He's literally jumping into the Feywild, and he just happens to spot it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess in the way it's presented, it's things that Orem is seeing during his Fey jump. And then you get ahead to the point where it's like, oh, here comes the plague jackal. Holy crap. And so I kept waiting for hints like that to pop up in those different worlds. But I thought it was still incredibly fun, and I enjoy.
So you got the one on the world where we were Orem in a bottle. It was like all this pristine crystalline architecture. That was the Alfar, I think they were called.
Alfar.
Yeah, no, that was really, really enjoyable. I enjoy the multiverse stuff. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to see it in the future. Maybe. I don't know.
I do have one question going back to the whole Sakaar blood making Orem a skittery beast. Why didn't that happen again later?
Why didn't it happen again later, you guys?
because of being on the weird world, his blood was making us.
Because
No, he stopped giving blood.
Because it had to be motivated. Like, it could only happen if the audience and you guys hear Sakar donate that blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you have a full rest, like, or that the action like stops and then picks up, it's assumed that Randus can whip up those like his healing infusions without other people's blood, or maybe just using his own surges or whatever. So I want to say it only happened twice, and only after Sakar had specifically donated blood.
Yeah.
So it couldn't happen every fight because there hadn't been that motivation, right? And I could have said is like, Randus checks, and that was a vial of Sakar's blood that he used. But like, the point of the mystery is that you can't just say it.
Right.
So, but that is a problem as well, because if you're too subtle, then nobody gets it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because going in, like talking to Matthew about it, I was like, we need to reveal this like within the first couple sessions.
Yes. Your exact words to me were, worst case scenario, we'll do it in the first big fight.
Yeah.
And that kind of came and went, and I was like, well, okay.
Yeah.
And I that was around the first time that I'm like, okay, we need to do something. We need to reveal this. And then I thought, Rodrigo put so much work into this season, and I don't know how long it's going to be. And Lords of the Feywild was like 15 years long. And I'm thinking, we've got time to do this. I want to make sure that we're seeding it, and I don't want to be too subtle, but I don't want to like take all the cool stuff that he's built and just kind of kick it into the river and have everybody go, look at that cool stuff floating down the river. That's a metaphor. But yeah, in retrospect, and this may be the only time you will ever hear me say this, and certainly in concert with Rodrigo, we were too subtle. And by the time we stopped being subtle, there was so much else going on that it was just kind of a moment of, this season is full of so much stuff that it's probably not going to come up organically unless we push it.
Yeah, it's something that I think game masters need to be aware of, and it's actually a problem that I've dealt with a lot as a game master, so you'd think I'd be better at it, but there's a huge problem with character secrets, and literally this is the conversation that I had with Matthew. I was like, nobody, like when you're playing with other people, players can rarely see past their own character sheets, right? It's like some players are going to be looking at the world, are going to be looking at other characters, but most of the time they're going to be very concerned with what their character has going on. So we have to do this early, and we have to do it big. And it just kind of didn't work out. It was, in fact, too subtle. And then the other thing is that I was like, okay, Matthew, we have to be on board with, this is a secret that Sakar doesn't want known, but you as a player and me as a game master, we want it to be out there. Right. And that is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to want different things than your character wants.
Right. To play against the natural instincts of what you're doing in character.
Right. Because and it brings a natural schism where you are like, as a player, I need to do this, but as a character, I would do this. And in that case, you really should just go with what the character would do, which is, in this case, to be secretive about it. So it was, in the long history of Critical Hit, it was one of the things that I could have definitely executed better. I don't like, it just kind of started manifesting late. And by that point, there was a lot of stuff going on.
I feel like the majority of the, if we call it, I don't want to say failing, but I think the majority of the issue was on my side with the way that I was attempting to express and to not express it in character and to some degree out of character. Yeah. So I think that you were giving me stuff to work with, but it was one of those things. And you actually said this to me at one point. It's like, dude, I don't know what else to do. I'm giving you stuff and it's just not the stuff you want. And that's the point that it really cemented to me. I'm like, okay, well, how do we get past this dichotomy of, and really what it comes down to is I have to stop being Shelley Winters. Because I joke about Stanislavski, but honestly, the majority of this season I have gone so far out of my way to not use a particular tone and speaking voice that I literally do at work, that I do with my family, that I do in the car. That tone and that voice that I did for Torque for so long has become really a shortcut into that character's head. And when I'm fighting myself to not, go, hey, maybe that's kind of stupid. Because I literally, the people at work know that I do that voice, and they know that means, actually, they don't know what it means, but they know that it means that I'm making fun of somebody when I start talking like that. And, when you're trying to focus on that, I just had to okay, we're going to break that. Stop being a dickhead. You can cut that out, Stephen. But stop being recalcitrant about what you're trying not to do, and just let's make a point of doing it. And I think from that point, it really unlocked a lot of things for me in the season. So,
yeah. Sam, did I ask you what your favorite part was?
Oh, I don't know. You didn't, I guess. Really, I really enjoyed getting to use the combination of stuff that I'd come up with Rodrigo, and then the far more prolific amount of stuff that he'd come up with about the southern continent, and kind of getting to play tour guide to a whole other world to your characters. So getting to introduce them to new concepts and lingo and organizations and places, and then all of those resources that Rodrigo was able to give me to make that happen and try to make it very organic. I enjoyed getting to do that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of the stuff that happened in this season is a result of the collaboration talks that we had. So, we actually had input into this world and what was going on. I'm not saying okay, Rodrigo, here's this thing, but
right.
how did the in the Feywild, how did Orem rebuild? Well, that's me saying, well, here's the things that we did to rebuild. And then Rodrigo going, oh, well, so-and-so went off to this place, and so-and-so went off to this place, so you have to deal with that. And then it'd be well, is there any kind of trade route between where Orem is at and where his parents are at? And, oh, yeah, we can put that in. And, and it sounds like that's the same thing that was going on with Sam and the Southern Continent and those characters.
It is interesting what all of the games, all of the in-between mini-games turned into, because, Orem's game was basically a resource management game.
Yeah.
I was like, here's what you have, here's what you need to do. Also, you get some free time to yourself to kind of, develop things. But basically, all of these projects are going to cost you your resources. What are you prioritizing? What are you delegating? And so on and so forth.
Right.
Randus's was actually a little war campaign where I was like, okay, do you want to tackle the northern theater or the eastern theater or the western theater? And he's like, well, I'll go here. And then that kind of impacted what I did with Matthew, where he's like, okay, well, the eastern side is taken care of. They need to send you in as a commando on the western side. And then Rob's was actually just playing 20 questions about local infrastructure, where he's like, I want to do this. Do they have any of this? And I'm like, no. Do they have this? And I'm like, yes, but it'll be difficult. And he's like, okay, I'll go with that. When I'm there, can I do this? And I'm like, no. Can I trick this into being this? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, okay, I do this with it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, this is what happened. It's like, that is not what I expected to happen. And I'm like, I know.
I know.
That was basically what the game with Rob was. I don't know what you would actually call it. I don't know if there's any game that is that. I think it was
Slap
just
fighting
briefly,
with Rob.
Yeah, briefly being married to Rob, I think is actually.
I have a weird mechanical Gamemaster question, because leading into, and I think it was after this the 2-part big fight that we had, the really long fight that lasted 2 episodes, 377 is the episode number. Before our next episode, Matthew and Rodrigo and I were talking after a Major Spoilers episode, and I said, well, we know what's coming up next. And Rodrigo was like, what? What do you mean? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, the next thing that's going to happen in the way that you usually run a campaign is we're either doing a skills challenge or we're dropping right into another encounter. And I don't know if that's because, if you look at the stats, that's kind of, what typically happens. We do an encounter or two and then a skills challenge and then going into the next item. But the thing that really surprised me and threw me for a loop was in that double agent episode where you're like, okay, you guys are getting ready to attack this room full of guards. What do you do? And I'm like, well, okay, let me cast my whatever that big monster guy is. Yeah, summon my monster. And then I was like expecting you to say, okay, roll for it. And you didn't. And it happened. And I'm like, are we just going to role play this whole final battle and never roll any dice? And is that something you could do as a DM, especially something that's a high stakes like that? Because I was like, with that,
I mean, I've literally done it before. You remember what happened to the central bad guy in the end of the last season?
Oh, right, yeah.
It's like there were no rolls for that.
Mm-hmm.
There were no rolls for the first time you faced off against them, and there weren't any rolls for the second time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. I was like, oh, is he really going to have us just storytell this final battle? Because that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So addressing the Steven's prognostications, it's definitely you were correct. It is. You had basically a 33% chance.
Oh yeah, sure.
Basically, D&D is fight skills or 4th edition is fight skills challenge or role play.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not really anything else that doesn't fit into those 3 categories. Sometimes you can do 2 of those at the same time, but usually all 3. But usually it's going to be one of those 3. As far as what happens in a skill challenge, what is role played and what isn't, or what's rolled and what isn't, it's mostly drama. First off, that summoning spell, when you summon a monster, it goes off. You're not rolling to see whether the spell happens or not. The monster appears.
Right.
So to mirror the mechanics of that, you don't have to roll to summon the monster. But also, I think to myself, what is more dramatic? Preventing, basically putting it on the line whether this monster appears or not, or potentially having him lose control of the monster, or potentially having him use the monster in some interesting ways. Like the monster introduces more stuff, and to a large degree, the point of skill challenges is to kind of hand you guys back some control, where you basically get to say, I would like for this to happen, and then basically having your dice rolls negotiate from there, the degree of success to which you achieve something. So, I mean, there's been plenty of skill challenges when someone's like, I jump onto the thing, and I'm like, okay, what do you do when you're there? And they're like, well, I was planning to roll for jumping onto the thing. So now let me think. It just depends what feels more dramatic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, it's totally an insight roll. And I'm like, well, I'll never do that.
Rob pointed out that Lords of the Feywild was 172
episodes.
172 episodes long. This one is just under half of that, just under half of that at 80 some episodes. 71, 72, 73, something like that. I obviously, since they haven't all been released, we're in the 70s something.
Yeah. Lords of the Feywild actually has 2 separate segments, though.
Right, the stuff that happens before going to the Feywild, and did this season seem right on target, or this? I guess I should say this campaign or this story you wanted to tell, Rodrigo. Did this seem on target to you? Too long or too short, or what?
No, I think for me it felt right on. To the point where. I mean, a lot of things happen when a season or when a kind of a chronicle is long, and part of that is what the players are retaining in their minds about what has been going on. I think Lords of the Feywild ended up being too long. There were a lot of things that I wanted to do, a lot of things that I wanted to cover, and it did get split into 2 parts basically, and that helped. But I feel that it was still too long. I think this season was right on with what I wanted. And a big part of that was, for me, just kind of trimming stuff out. A big part of that was also the fact that I've been playing with most of you guys for a long time. Actually, I've been kind of playing with all of you guys for a long time. There was just a long period during which I wasn't playing with Sam, but I played with her a lot. And just kind of knowing what you guys tend to go for and not go for, and just populating the go for column with plot relevant things as opposed to just interesting things, and then the not go for thing with just interesting things that you might just like pop into your brain and say like, we just want to spend a third of an episode on mushrooms today, and I'm like, okay, well, that's something you can do.
No, we are terrible at that.
No, and it's not a bad thing. But Lords of the Feywild, I basically went in and I said, there has to be something in this, like something big, some big, significant kind of small arc or large arc for every character. And it really drew things out. It's not a bad thing, but it just makes for a very large season, which I think for some people becomes unmanageable, but both for players and for listeners. This time around, I was like, well, we're going to focus on these, and I'm just going to try to generally give the player something to do that moves us in that direction. And I think, always mixed results because role-playing games are all over the place. I think there were some times where players were just were engaged and they were like, here's how my unique set of skills helps in this situation that sort of, as a group, we haven't encountered before because we're somewhere else. And I think there were times when a player was just like, okay, wake me up when we get to a part where I'm useful again. And I think that's going to happen in every game. But there may have been slightly more of that this time around as opposed to like sort of a conscientious taking a back seat. I think maybe there were a few times where I just didn't provide enough hooks for particular players to do particular things at particular times.
Sure. Any other thoughts or reactions or comments that you guys want to share about this last season? Go ahead, Matthew.
I don't think I have said it out loud, but I really, really like what Sam brings to the podcast, just in terms of, you can tell, and I mean this with love and affection, you can tell that you've LARPed. And that is amazing. Yeah, and it made a lot of changes just in terms of the group dynamic. And I think they were all for positive. And, it was one of those things where sometimes you got to keep up. And that's something that, is really great in just in a gaming perspective. A lot of times when you get a new player, and by you, I mean me, because generally in my life, and you may not know this about me, but I generally look around my life and go, man, everybody's better at this than me. And when I looked at Sam and I went, man, she's really better at this than me. I really need to up my game. So, that I think was fascinating. I really like that dynamic. And I think Little Sparkle is a really fun character that sometimes you want to punch right in the beak, but for all the right reasons, for that, that Malcolm Reynolds kind of right reasons, you just want to hit her in the face. And that's wonderful to have in a character. So
what do you mean by, you can tell I LARPed? I'm just curious.
Well, because that in one of the early fights, your camera was on and you kept throwing beanbags at the camera going, fireball.
Well, I would say the role play that you do reminds me of the role play that I experienced when I was LARPing. So whether that means that I haven't played games where people role play like you, that they don't LARP, are you saying you didn't LARP? Are you now, or have you ever been a member of a LARPing group?
Vampire wasn't it? Was it?
Council will instruct
Chicago
the
by
witness.
Yeah.
No, she has, but yeah.
The Dead City Productions, the Northwestern student LARP, which was arguably the most influential thing in my entire life.
Yeah, and it shows in all the best ways. So,
well, thank you.
Yep,
I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Anything else?
Oh.
Anything else anybody else wants to share?
I'll be honest, I actually took a lot longer than everybody else to warm up to Sam.
Because you're just you got hate in your heart, is that why?
That's part of it.
Okay.
No, there was a lot of points early on, especially with Little Sparkle's high charisma, where I felt that Ket's status as face was just not necessary anymore. Mechanically, at least. because Sparkle could easily match or beat most of Ket's stats on that front because Ket's not focused on charisma.
And she's on her home turf, which means the streetwise for her is naturally a more
So there's a lot of time in there where it's just like it took me a while to actually find Sam instead of just being like, why'd you make the character that just screws me? Like that's supposed to be my thing.
But you're cool now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, I was concerned about that because, when I was building this character, I was like, well, I'm going to play an Arc from Logic Rogue, which means I have high charisma and I, have a lot of skill points because of this class I'm taking. Like, and I asked Rodrigo, like, will I be stepping on Ket's toes if I take social stats? And I think, like, we kind of worked out, as we did in, like, a few situations where, like, kind of two heads can be better than one in some of those things. Like I would feel like in Coldport, a lot of times like Sparkle, or for that matter on the train, like Sparkle and Cat would be like, all right, we've got bluff scores that can like stand up to any scrutiny. So let's leave the rest of the people in fish crates and go to
and don't think we don't remember that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm trying to sort of evolve the characters and evolve the group, right? So a lot of early stuff is about getting everybody their niche and making sure we emphasize what everybody can do. Later on, it really becomes much more about characters, and because, for example, skill challenges are so difficult because I specifically make them really easy to fail at.
Yeah, you do.
Giving the players, not just each individual player, a something to do and something to be good at, or a means to beat them, because listeners will notice, like, after our big, like, basically respec where everybody came in with like a brand new character sheet that had a lot of changes to it. Even if the characters were the same, there were a lot more rerolls, a lot more free successes on skill checks and stuff like that to basically give the players the tools that they needed. But basically, what I'm getting at is like building redundancy into the characters also creates some good tension. Both it makes certain things easier and certain things harder. For example, it makes it so that you can have two characters basically lead on different fronts. You can also make it so that two characters are right on top of each other and they can't roll those stats, right? We run into this like yes, no, yes, Arcana situation a lot. But actually I wanted to have characters that are all of there. So basically Ket Randis and Orem kind of run into each other with their Arcana. Sparkle and Orem run into each other with their acrobatics, and Sakar kind of actually covers a lot of people's secondary stuff with like endurance and things like that, where he can actually run into that. So I was trying to build that tension. That said, I will say, when Sam and I were talking about it, and we were like, well, so we'll build Sparkle to be kind of like this street level person rather than necessarily like this like wheeling and dealing type character. I also said, by the way, when Rob pitched this character, I said, Rob, make a face, and he made a con primary character, so he knows what he's getting into. And we did, and like we specifically went through and said, okay, having a character that's a con primary, what can we do to bump up these stats to make sure that he's like saving on feats. That's actually a big part of the reason why Ket walked in with a staff this season, is because mechanically it actually made a lot of sense, freed up some space, and kind of gave the character new things to do.
It freed up like 3 feats?
Yeah. So it's like, hey, guess what? You can like just pump that into charisma or charisma based stuff, or not. Like you can actually just play with this. So yeah, you're going to end up stepping on each other's toes and at some point. And the important thing is to role play through it, right? to rather than say, well, mechanically my character's not doing anything, it's just things like, well, my character's kind of roleplay wise geared towards something else. I made sure that nobody was walking in with a clone of somebody else's character.
Yeah, he totally shot down my idea for Glorum.
Yeah, actually, I kind of didn't, because one of the pitches that I gave Matthew, I was like, do you want to play Orem's Padawan?
Oh.
Yeah, as a sword mage or something.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
That would've
Matthew
been
was like, no
interesting.
thanks.
Well, this is the
That
thing.
would have been funny.
Yeah, no. There's no way I am ever going to intentionally be Steven's sidekick. Because I don't know if you guys
Why not,
know.
chum? We could have had all sorts of fantastic conversations.
Steven and I
in
don't
Elegant.
have out-of-character conversations. After 25 years, every conversation that Steven and I have ever had, be they in character, out of character, in college, on a sandwich, all of those conversations, those are real, those are canonical, and they affect every conversation we have. And you may think I'm joking, but you've never heard us yell at each other off the air.
No, we really don't. And we do talk off the air, though.
That's true. We talk a lot. I talk to you guys, Steven specifically, and Rodrigo as well, more than I do my family. And that's probably something that I'm going to have to pay for an awful lot of therapy for at some point.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of therapy, someone was asking on Twitter the other day, are we going to have a chat about Epic Destiny some point in the future? And yes, I will say we probably will have a chat about Epic Destiny sometime in the future.
I would say 2/3 of the way through a document right now that you guys are going to have to read through.
Okay.
So that's
Epic Destinies.
So that's the first thing that's kind of important, right? Second thing is the person responded, I believe it was the same person, said, this is really cool because in all my time playing 4th edition, none of our characters reach the levels that you guys are about to reach, which again is kind of the point of continuing Critical Hit in 4th edition, because we want to go all the way up to the top, because maybe not everyone's done it, maybe not everyone's experienced it before, and maybe just because we need to tell this story in this system. But because we have a lot of things to do, and Rodrigo needs a brain rest from all of this, there's going to be a break. We have another break coming up for how long? I don't know, but it's not going to be 2 or 3 weeks for people that are like, oh, so 2 or 3 weeks we're going to have a new season of Critical Hit. No, we're going to have an extendo break again, just like we did before. And I think it's going to be interesting. In this, like we did last season, you will see some other systems being played. Maybe 3 systems. Maybe 3 systems being played. The other thing is we're going to experiment with some different things that, keep in mind, is an experiment, but I'm also hoping you enjoy quite a bit. Now, there are some people who have heard what's coming up in relation to the experiment, and they think it's really cool and think that you will enjoy it, so I hope you will keep that in mind. Yeah, we don't know when. So when people are going to say, so when does the next season of Critical Hit, or this main story that Rodrigo tells, when is it coming back? When Rodrigo's ready and when we're ready to do that. Yeah. So
when he's tanned and rested and fully functional.
And so, but I think we've got some fun things coming up.
Hopefully before the next season of Westworld.
Well, now that if it's the fall of 2018, I think we probably will. But if it is the spring of 2018, if it's January 2018, I don't know. Maybe.
What? So, planned.
Yeah. So for people that are thinking, couple weeks, couple of months, push more for a couple of months than just a couple of weeks.
Yes. We haven't done a couple of months for an off season or a couple of weeks for an off season since between
like
1 and 2.
The first one.
Yeah. Because I think that's probably because, Rodrigo, you had what was coming up next ready to go for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a lot of stuff, but it really, seriously, we ended the season and I was like, okay, who's going to run a game for me?
Right. And that's part of the fun too. Is Rodrigo does DM and he likes to play too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, Rodrigo, if you are playing in any other games when you're not messing with our minds.
Not really. I don't get a lot of time outside of real world job. So my schedule is pretty difficult. So it's hard for me to actually get a chance to play. So this is going to be the first game that I play in since
Modern City.
Modern City, yeah, actually. I think.
And for those asking, is Modern City coming back in this quote-unquote off-season? No. If you want to hear Modern City come back, you need to get over to patreon.com/majorspoilers and sign up, because that is a specific goal that we will bring Modern City back as a standalone show when we hit our funding goal over at patreon.com/majorspoilers. And if you enjoyed this show, and I know many of you do, then again, I would encourage you to go over to patreon.com/majorspoilers and sign up, because that is the way that this show is able to move forward. We're going to have to buy new equipment in the next season. We're going to have to, pay for growing costs. I'm imagining that our server costs are going to grow yet again. And so we have real-world costs that are incurred to make this show possible for you week after week after week. Yep. And I'm pretty positive that we hit 51 episodes this year. In the past, it's usually been 49 or 50, so we actually increased the number of episodes. Granted, it's been by one, but still there are a lot of other podcasts out there that are really good, but they're not every week. They're not there for you like that good friend ready to pick you up at the side of the road when your tire is flat in the middle of winter. I know that's being pretty specific to just a select few of you and your friends, but I think you understand where I'm going.
Imagine, if you will.
Yes, you're stranded on the side of the road. Who would you rather have come pick you up?
Critical Hit.
Or those other guys?
I would be terrified.
AAA. I would go with AAA. I mean, I can change your tire, and I'll be happy to come pick you up, but...
You can have Critical Hit pick you up, but no guarantee that vehicle won't blow up 5 miles down the road.
Right. There's also the fact that the last time the Critical Hit team was together in a car, the driver nearly passed out from lack of oxygen.
From laughing so hard. Saying. And that's happened more than once. That's happened more than once.
I think that's happened every time we've gotten the Critical Hit.
No, I don't think so. It happened that first year when Rodrigo and I drove together on the way back because we were laughing so hard, and I think that may have been the fumes coming off of your van. And then this last time when we were all together, I forget what we were laughing about.
Could have been anything.
But when you hear,
no, I remember.
I remember exactly, and I'm not going to repeat it on the air.
Oh, right. But when you hear me say, "Oh, I can't breathe," or I'm getting lightheaded," then that's time to can the laughter.
Take a step back.
Yeah. Because then we're all going to die. No. Speaking of things kicking in, my codeine is starting to kick in. So I think we better wrap up this installment of Critical Hit. We'll be back next week. Don't worry.
Feel better, Steven?
I think I am going to. This is just the first dose. I got like 30 more doses to go on this stuff, so it's going to be a good time. But thank you everyone for joining us for this season, this tale that Rodrigo has been telling us. I think all of us have had a lot of fun, and I want to thank Rodrigo and Sam and Matthew and D&D Brian and Rob for all being along for the ride this year. I think, or I shouldn't say year, for this story, because it's been a lot of fun, and I think we have. If you know that 4th edition goes all the way to level 30, we've got a ways to go, and it's going to be
30?
Interesting. Yeah.
I only signed up for level 20. I'm going to need a bonus to go to the last 10.
Yeah, okay. Well, next season, the part of Matthew will be played by my 10-year-old.
Please. Your 10-year-old can't make references back to 1979.
He might. He's been watching a lot of Rockford Files with me, so he just might.
Welcome back, Carter.
A little 10-year-old going,
Picture, if you will.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the Twilight Zone.
And then he'll start every time he starts with his mic open. He'll say, "And that's how I save Christmas." Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we can do that. All right. Thank you again, all of you guys here at the table, and all of you virtually, and thank you, listeners, for being part of Critical Hit. We always appreciate you, and thank you for making this a fun time for all of us. And we'll be back next time. And until then, here's hoping all of your dice rolls are critical hits.
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.